Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 75. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday. Steelers Nation getting ready for Super Wildcard Weekend. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Buffalo Bills kicking off Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Conditions a bit unknown for Buffalo, but the weather, needless to say, will not be great up by the lake. And Dave, since our last conversation, not only has the forecast in Buffalo maybe changed slightly, the coaching landscape just in football at large has changed in big ways. Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick out of their places. Carroll moved to an advisory role, Saban retiring, and Belichick, we don't know where he's going to end up, but it will not be staying in New England. So a lot has happened the last 48 hours.
Yeah, football world has changed, has it not? Crazy for all three of those coaches. The news related to each one for that to come down in the time frame that it did. And boy, New England's already they didn't waste any time, right? They've already got a new head coach in Gerard Mayo going to take over for Bill Belichick there. Who if you're reading the tea leaves or reading Twitter and all like that, I don't know. It sounds like he might end up in Atlanta, I guess, either Atlanta or out west, I guess, with the Chargers. Obviously, there's several openings around the NFL right now. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Rest assured, I think Robert Kraft insinuated in so many words that they expect him on a sideline and see him in a hoodie somewhere else. But really interesting news when it comes to the three head coaches that you mentioned in a matter of 24 hours.
Yeah, and the Saban retirement just kind of a gut punch to college football and the landscape and what he's meant for the sport and, of course, for University of Alabama. So, of course, our focus here is on Pittsburgh and Buffalo playing again Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. A little bit later in this show, as we always do on Friday, have a beat writer on. That's Matt Perino. He covers the Bills for Syracuse.com, News for Buffalo, and has the Shout podcast. So we'll talk to him, get his perspective on the Bills a bit later in the show, Dave. But let's start off with the injury report here for both sides. For Pittsburgh, if you just put aside the loss of TJ Watt for a moment, difficult as that is, of course, that's a massive loss for Pittsburgh. Overall, otherwise, they are pretty healthy. Minkah Fitzpatrick almost certainly going to play. Same with Landon Robertson. Again, you would love to have TJ Watt. It sucks that he's unavailable and will not play in this game, but at least Pittsburgh's getting some reinforcements elsewhere.
Yeah, it's hard to look past that TJ Watt loss, though. But other than that, the play looks like it's going pretty well overall from a health standpoint here. It'd be good to see Minkah Fitzpatrick back on the field for the Steelers on Sunday against the Bills. Man, they need a strong game out of him. For sure, and it'd be interesting to see how they utilize him in this game, and obviously get Casey back, and Eric Rowe, as we mentioned, jumped off the tape in this game against the Ravens. But yeah, this is going to be a healthy bunch. I think really the only question at this point when it comes to the lineup and what the roster is going to look like on Sunday, to me, Alex, is what is this team going to do at punter, and who is going to be the seventh inactive overall? I think we're headed for some obvious kind of transactions happening on Saturday for this team. Miles Jack, Eric Rowe, you would think both those guys, if neither is actually signed to the 53-man roster, I would expect both those guys to be the elevations there. And if you do that, and if that's two elevations, then and if this team does want Brad Wing to punt, how do you get him onto the 53 there? So I think the biggest question at this point, once again, is what are the Steelers going to do at the punter position? And even though it's not a huge storyline. What does that 7th inactive look like?
Sure, that's a great point. I mean, Teryl Austin essentially confirming Eric Rowe will have a role. What that looks like, we're not sure, but that means he'll either have to be signed to the 53 or he can be elevated. With the playoffs, there is no restriction on the number of times you can be elevated, so they can do that as they have been. Should note from one roster standpoint, since we last spoke, Monte Casey now officially on the 53-man roster. The Steelers temporarily received a roster exemption for him for about 48 hours. And so to make way for him on the 53, safety Trenton Thompson placed on IR, presumably with the neck issue he was dealing with since week 15 against the Colts. And so that's one safety who will not be back in this postseason run in Thompson. But of course, Casey being added, and he should have some sort of role in this game.
Yeah, the thing with Watt, there was a video, I think from Richie Walsh put it out there of Watt doing some work on the side. And I know it's way too early to kind of look forward, but man, you have to think if the Steelers somehow manage to win this game against the Bills on Sunday, TJ Watt's going to do everything in his power to get back on the field for that next round of the playoffs, which I assume would be against the Ravens then.
Yeah, it would be in Baltimore, and let's just hopefully that conversation can exist. Would he play in a hypothetical divisional matchup against Baltimore? I'm not sure, but hopefully we can explore that and have an answer 2 weeks from now. So that is Pittsburgh's perspective. Injury, really not much to watch for from that standpoint, knowing that Watt's out, knowing that almost certainly Fitzpatrick will play and others as well. Buffalo is really interesting. We talked about that with Matt here a little bit later in the show, but they have some notable names who are not trending in the right direction. Those are guys like Gabe Davis, their speedy wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, essentially implying that we're going to win this one so Davis can get back next week, meaning that Davis unlikely to play in this game. He's got a PCL sprain suffered in week 18 against Miami. One of their starting linebackers, Teryl Dodson, has not been practicing. I think he was limited, I believe so, on Wednesday and then did not practice on Thursday. And then Rasul Douglas, one of their top corners, his status in question right now. So those are some key players, offense and defense, we'll be watching for on the Friday final injury report.
Yeah, Gabe Davis obviously had that big game against the Steelers the last time these two teams met. Now, obviously, with the weather, could impact the passing game, especially down the field. So maybe with him potentially not playing, maybe that gets tamped down as far as, how impactful it is. But when you do look at Rasul Douglas and Tyrell Dodson trending towards not playing, that could wind up being a pretty decent storyline in this thing, I think, overall, Alex. Look, the Bills have been beat up at the off-the-ball linebacker position this season, and it will be interesting to see if I think we know what they would do. Who would probably be the next guy up if they don't have a guy like Tyrell Dodson or Rasul Douglas on the outside there. But I just wonder, if this ends up being a storyline if both those guys don't go, and if the Steelers are able to essentially play a perfect game in this, if we're not looking back and saying, they missed those two guys.
I think it will be one. Douglas had been playing really good ball for them. 4 interceptions in the 9 games as a Bill since getting traded over from Green Bay ahead of the deadline. And then Dodson replacing Milano. And they've had a lot of loss at that inside linebacker position. Edmonds goes to Chicago and Milano's done for the season. And now Dodson, his status is at best very questionable in this game. So for a Pittsburgh team expected to run the ball, if they're hurting at inside linebacker some, the run defense, which has not been amazing this season, if they're taking some more shots there at linebacker, that's going to, again, play in Pittsburgh's favor.
And it looks like a little bit, I don't know what's going on, as far as flu season and all like that, but a couple of guys, Dawson Knox, I expect both these guys to play, obviously, Dawson Knox and their starting left tackle, Deion Dawkins, but I wonder if there might be a little bit of a flu bug running around in that locker room.
Yeah, there were some illnesses. Not sure if that's all related or what's going on there, but we'll see what the final report. Point is, I think we're going to watch the Buffalo final Friday report a lot more closely than Pittsburgh, where we kind of know which way the Steelers are going to be going for this game.
Agreed.
All right, now from a player standpoint, don't think really any players did anything too notable the last couple of days. Mason Rudolph speaking, his first playoff start. I think Najee Harris had some interesting comments. His team is a lot more confident in this playoff game than their last one, the 2021 wildcard loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, just because they were so young back then. Rookies like Pat Frymouth, Harris himself, Dan Moore, a better offensive line this time around. So Harris expressing confidence for where this team is at going into Buffalo.
Look, this team knows what they have to do on Sunday there. And what did he say? I think we'll have what were some of the quotes that Najee had? I think we'll have something for him, some big plays or something like that. But overall, I think the takeaway from this past week from a player availability media standpoint is this team knows the task at hand. There seems to be a lot of confidence right now, and I think that's where it starts and ends. I mean, look, you'd have to be foolish not to look around at least from the major media standpoint. I mean, everybody and their brothers on the Bills, and why wouldn't they be? I mean, this is a 9.5, 10-point game. This game's going to be in Buffalo. Buffalo's been a hot team as of late. I mean, you better have a very good reason to not pick the Bills. But with that said, the players see this, and I think I stated the other day, you can bet Mike Tomlin's letting them know about all this. Look, nobody's giving you a chance to win this game. What are you going to do about it here? So. Back to player availability, nothing earth-shattering, and that's good. There's no additional kind of storylines. I know Joey Porter Jr. Said some things earlier in the weeks. Looking forward to kind of locking up if asked to do so, a guy like Diggs. But I mean, that's standard fare.
He says that every week.
Yeah, the confidence level that goes along with a young player like that. So I don't think there's really any bulletin board material out there from either side here. And I think the Steelers, know the players know the task at hand here.
Buffalo on the 5-game winning streak, the longest in the NFL. Pittsburgh winning 3 in a row, which is now tied third longest winning streak in the NFL. Yeah, I do my weekly, how the national media is picking each Steelers game post, and usually there's a split between both sides. I've yet to find really one prominent national media member to pick Pittsburgh. Have you found anybody that's given? Some have said it's going to be closer than you think, but that's as far as I've kind of seen the national media come.
Yeah, I think when you look at what show is it? Michael Irvin, Undisputed, the other day with Michael Irvin and Richard Sherman. They talked about ways that they could see the Steelers win this game and how it might be closer. But I don't think either one of them came right out and said, I think the Steelers will win this game. Just watched ESPN's Get Up this morning, and all 4 of those guys picked the Bills. If you look at the weekly NFL.com panel, of 10, that was a clean sweep of the Bills. So
by wide margins, I think, in most cases, at least.
Yeah. So it is come game time. It is going to probably be, and we'll see what the NFL Network, Rich Eisen crew and all like that, if there's any lone wolves in that. But I think, you're right. Predominantly, and with good reason,
Sure.
the Bills are the heavy favorites across the landscape here.
Yeah, it's still 2 versus 7 seed, and so you would expect in most national media predictions the 2 seed to be favored, and Buffalo has earned that right from winning the AFC East and going on a great run to end the year. So we should also address the elephant in the room. The weather and the forecast still seems a bit up in the air in terms of the specifics for this game, but as we kind of mentioned top of the show, it's not going to be good. It's going to be cold. The wind chill is going to put things around 0. There will be a lot of wind, gusts up to maybe 40, 50 miles per hour. Snow is kind of the one thing I'm not sure how much they're going to be getting up in Buffalo, maybe a couple inches, maybe more, maybe less. It's a little hard to say. There was a report / rumor about the game potentially getting moved. The Steelers shot that down. There's no credibility to that. And if that was going to happen, it'd have to get made by like today, because Pittsburgh, I assume, will be traveling to Buffalo on Saturday, tomorrow. So pay little mind to those kind of reports right now in terms of the location of the game, but the forecast will obviously have a heavy impact in how this game looks and plays out.
I tell you what, I'd much rather the Steelers play the Bills in that kind of weather than a nice October day, I guess. I think the elements or potential elements of this game help to some degree level the playing field, so to speak. This at least appears to be setting up as a who can run the football the best and not make mistakes in the elements. And look, look, Josh Allen can throw the football, right? He's got a ball that can probably cut through some of the wind. But might you reach a level where it comes to the wind impacting this thing where it's not wise to throw the football down the field? I think you could see a lot of short passes in this game, and I think that's another kind of equalizer here when it comes to the Steelers. So looking at it, at least where we sit right now, where several of these forecasts are out there right now, I tend to put advantage Steelers on this.
I do as well. And I think Eddie Faulkner, the interim OC, had the quip of our game plan's not changing. Not that we're ignoring the weather. Our game plan is to run the ball regardless of what the weather is. But I think if it does, the old snow tires to put on Najee Harris and Jalen Warren and maybe kind of slow the game down and maybe eliminate some of the big play and speed that the Buffalo has in their pass game, that does work. But, I had the stat yesterday that since week 12, the two teams with the most rushing attempts in football is Pittsburgh number 1, Buffalo number 2. Now they do it in different ways. And of course, Josh Allen and some of the, scrambles will count, but there's a design run game with Josh Allen. No question about that. And James Cook's had a really strong season. So Buffalo's no stranger to, running the football. And they're a team that certainly can play some power football as well.
Agreed. You can bet Josh Allen will have his snow tires on, and that's going to be an important factor in this game. And I don't want to get too far deep into our breakdown and all, but I mean, if you get that guy in a short yardage situation, you might as well get those guys to start moving the chains. Very effective in the quarterback sneak and kind of their version of the tush push. And I mean, he's such a big guy anyway. And with the footing, in other words, you better keep them out of third and short, fourth and short type situations, because if you don't, that's automatically probably going to be a first down for them. And then there's just this scramble ability, and he's not a guy that's going to take off with the football and immediately look to, once he gets past the yard marker, slide down. He is going to try to bulldoze you. He's a big guy. We saw a key third down, I think, in that in that game against the Dolphins. Quarterback mobility when it comes to the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, regardless of the weather, is a factor in this game, and the weather's not going to change that.
No question about that. So let's get into the coordinators mentioning Eddie Faulkner, Teryl Austin, speaking as they normally do for a Sunday game on Thursday. Again, I think both of them were, not saying a whole lot, and that's probably the right approach this week. Just let the play, do the talking, get focused on this game. Did think it was interesting that Faulkner mentioned that heading into the Ravens game, he had offensive guard Isaac Seumalo speak to the team. We don't know exactly what Seumalo said, a man of generally few words, but it did seem to make an impact. So you just kind of look at some of those leaders and guys who have Super Bowl experience, and Seumalo certainly does. That's interesting, and I wonder if that played some sort of role in kind of seeing the way this team approached the regular season finale.
Yeah, look, he's got some playoff experience, right? And a man of few words. When a man of few words does speak, it's probably a good idea to have your ears open and your mouth shut. If Isaac Seumalo was talking to me, I would listen to him.
Me as well.
And you want to talk about a guy that's no nonsense and playing through something, injury and all like that, being effective on top of it. That's probably a good idea. Once again, it goes back to playoff experience. I don't know if you saw, I put out on Twitter, the active, not 53, because I think they had elevated some, but the active roster the Steelers had the last time that they were in a playoff game. And do you remember that John LeGlue had to start that game, Alex?
Did he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny how these things get away from you, and you look back and you think, "Oh man, I didn't quite remember that." I will tell you, I will tell you, when you look at this team on both sides of the ball. Now, obviously, there's recency bias, and 3 years from now, we might pull up this active roster from Sunday and say, "Oh man, how did they even?" Maybe you're going back and saying, "Well, maybe I overvalued this or that." I think just from an active roster standpoint, and look, I mean, this team has lost some pieces on defense throughout the year, but at least the pieces that they do have now, they've been playing with for a little while, and then you get Minka back and all like that. But I think specifically on the offensive side of football, you look at this team, and this offensive line, knock on wood, and this is something that we said coming out of last season, with all those snaps that they were able to get out of the offensive line, and how lucky this team was to be able to have that starting five play the amount of snaps that they played last year. Really stands for this team making the change at right tackle, which Cuomo Okorafor and Broderick Jones. You've had the same pieces this year with this offensive line, right? I mean, how many snaps have guys like Spencer Anderson and Dylan Cook, had to play this year?
Yeah, I mean, Herbig started 2 games when Daniels went down, but that was early in the season, really the latter half of the year. Once they inserted Jones in week 9 against Tennessee, it's been the same starting 5. And that's probably one reason why this run game has improved. There's some continuity there. There's some youthful guys like Jones that have experience now that's probably making this group cohesive down the stretch.
Absolutely. Look, and Eddie Faulkner wasn't going to hide a game plan, even if he wanted to here. Their emphasis is to get the football on the ground to Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, and see what they can, obviously can do there. So what else did another thing that Eddie talked about was how they play a lot of nickel, and number 7 specifically being on the field. That's something that we've highlighted quite a bit. I think that's going to be a key point in this game is, can the Steelers get that 12 and 13 personnel out there, and can they bludgeon them with the run?
Sure. We'll be talking about that more in the preview of this game. That was one of the first things that came to mind for me, I think, on our Monday show when we just found out they're definitely going to play Buffalo. Here's the scenario. Here's when the game's going to be. And I remember Johnson being one of those guys that never comes off the field. He's played 89% of the Bills' defensive snaps this year. He's had 7 games in which he's played every single snap. So as much action as you're going to see from a nickel corner. But, I mean, he's a great nickel corner. He's great against the run. He fills the run hard. He hit tackles and approaches things, has the mentality of a linebacker. So, obviously, they feel comfortable getting away with that. But, yeah, if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm coming out heavy. They've had so much success out of 12, 13 personnel the last couple of weeks. And I'm trying to see if Buffalo will match big for big, or how they handle some of those ultra-heavy personnel groupings.
I want them to earn it on that side of the football. I want them to be talking about Taron Johnson holding up specifically against the run. We'll see what happens with Tyrell Dotson if he doesn't play. Can a guy like Balen Spector fill in for him and fill in admirably? Plain and simple. The talk coming out of this game, to me, I think if the Bills win this, should be, man, that defense really handled the Steelers' run, and they got them away from that run either via the scoreboard or just the ineffectiveness of it. And it ended up being other mistakes maybe in the passing game, and the Steelers couldn't adjust when getting away from the run.
A true trench game, I think, will be determining this one. So before we get into previewing this game a bit more, Teryl Austin speaking as well. He had the quip about still having nightmares over that Gabe Davis 98-yard touchdown 2 years ago, but it appears Davis unlikely to play in this game. Again, Austin mentioning Rowe will have a role, did not really define how the cornerback grouping will look and what Peterson's role will be with Minka Fitzpatrick back. How do you think those guys are going to get used and moved around, Dave?
Yes.
Anything beyond that?
I mean, look, and we didn't get to talk enough about the tight ends when we talked during our upcoming interview with Matt Perino and all like that. But this defense has had trouble with the tight ends this year. So I think you have to do something with Minka playing a role in the coverage there. And we both agreed the other day, at least with the TV tape and the all 22 tape, that Eric Rowe really jumped off the tape in that game against the Ravens there. You have Casey coming back, a very hard hitting safety that you can do some things with. I think you're going to see a lot of situations where you're going to have some 3 safeties on the field here. But look, you've got to stop the run. So whatever that looks like with the bodies that you have to put out there as far as the safeties go, and then more importantly, I mean, you're going to have to match up Joey Porter, obviously, probably on Diggs, and give him maybe a little less safety help in that, so that you can focus on the tight ends. If you want to talk about how Buffalo, a talking point of Buffalo coming out of this game with the win, it would probably revolve around, well, they were able to run the football and they were able to get the football to their tight ends down the middle of the field for an explosive play or two, and God forbid a touchdown or two in that situation. So, I mean, I think in so many words, Austin said that they're going to find a way to get all those guys on the field. So I think at some point you're going to see all 3 of them on the field.
I think so too. I think they're going to take advantage of the newfound depth they have with Casey's return and Fitzpatrick being healthy, et cetera. And yeah, I mean, Kincaid's had a really strong year. Their tight ends, Buffalo, they have 11 of them combined in terms of touchdowns. Pittsburgh's allowed 7 touchdowns at tight ends this year, most of them coming over the last 6 or so weeks. And so that's going to be, one of those key matchups to watch. Let me phrase it a different way. Pittsburgh comes out in their base 3-4 defense for the first snap of the game, hypothetically. Who are the 2 starting safeties in this game?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex.
I can offer my answer as you kind of mull it over. I'll say, and you're right, it probably matters less than we're going to spend the time to talk about it, because they're all going to see playing time and have a role. But I think it's Minka Fitzpatrick at free, Eric Rowe at strong safety. I can still see Patrick Peterson playing some outside corner and base in this game, especially with Gabe Davis, we assume, not playing. And they still have speed elsewhere, but he's one of those top speedster home run hitters. But I think Peterson could still get a couple of snaps on the outside before playing a lot of slot and some safety rotational stuff and sub packages.
Yeah, I think the thing, and here's the confusing aspect of it, is Casey has missed this bunch of games, right? So how integrated is he into some of the things that they're doing now, and then also the communication aspect. You've gone a couple of games now. So many words, you can say the same thing about Minka, but Minka's really kind of a quarterback back there anyway. But and the other aspect of this is just the way Eric Rowe has played.
Yeah, he's played well,
and I not only in the passing game but against the run. So. I think the biggest question is how do you integrate Casey into that more?
I think in dime packages. I think he's going to be your dime defender, which was before all the safety started going down. That was kind of his role, initially in the season. So when it was Neal, I mean, they were doing some rotating where Neal was kind of more your base guy, and then Casey would come in sub packages. But that's my assumption, I think, because he has missed some time, as you said, and Rowe has played well, and Rowe's got some more size. I mean, Casey can hit. I mean, there's no question about that, but he's not that box type that Rowe is. And so I think Casey in those 60B situations will be ideal for him.
What about the Eric Rowe familiarity factor with what Buffalo does?
It's a good point. Spent time in Miami, and New England too, I think. So, I mean, he knows that team well. And I just think his play has earned it. I mean, I have questions about him in open grass and speed. And I think the lack of speed for this defense as a whole is one of the bigger concerns in this game. Weather may mitigate that to some degree. The Bills' injuries may do so as well. But, I mean, in terms of that kind of classic, downhill, punishing, hit power, detail, punch the ball out kind of role, I mean, he's filled that really well.
All right. The biggest factor for me, especially if the weather's, like we think it's going to be, is less about pushing the football, protecting down the field, which they're still going to take their shots, right? you would think in this game. But, a lot of the short area type stuff, the tight ends, look, Kincaid's fantastic, but I mean, Knox is no slouch, man, over there. And that element, along with, they will throw the football to the running backs out of the backfield as well, too. So this is going to be a box-centric kind of game where the Steelers defense, I think, really has to impact this thing.
Sure, that's totally fair. Anything else from Austin or Faulkner or any players, any commentary there that you want to address and make mention of?
No, I think we hit most of it there as far as the important stuff, even though both of them did talk a little bit. I mean, look, they and what else are they going to say? This team has confidence in Marcus Golden and Nick Herbig. Those are some big shoes. It will be interesting to see how both those guys are utilized along with Highsmith. I expect there to be a rotation, all three guys to play on both sides. One kind of underlying thing here is, and it's not much of one, but you roll back to the preseason and all like that. Nick Herbig got some snaps against Dawkins in that game,
Didn't he have some wins agained him too?
Yeah,
I know it's
he
preseason,
did. Yeah, and on the other side as well too, he had that tremendous athletic, the kind of play that made us kind of sit back and say, maybe this guy's not going to be moved off the ball there. That real athletic, turned the corner from the left side there, and I think had a strip sack on that game. So this guy has. Even though it was a preseason game, he's logged some snaps in there, and kind of familiar with at least the personnel aspect of this. And even though he hasn't played a ton of snaps overall, we've talked several times about when he's on the field, making an impact. We know Marcus Golden can play both sides. These guys need to stand up against a run, though, out on the edge. We and you got a big guy. I don't know how much Herbig's going to line up against Dawkins. I'm not worried about Highsmith over there on that side overall. I think Highsmith does a pretty good job of setting the edge, and I think he can handle a guy like Dawkins. But, one of the knocks I kind of took on Herbig coming out of Wisconsin is when he did have to face those bigger bodied, mammoth kind of tackles there. Now, where he can win against him is with the speed element of it. But how is he going to hold up in some of those run situations when asked to kind of set the edge over there? I think that's a big aspect. But back to the point here is, this team is in a lot better shape than they were last season when it came to TJ Watt not being on the field here overall. So it's going to take a group effort from those three. I expect all three once again to be utilized and moved around. I expect Alex Highsmith obviously to play. He might play 100% of snaps in this, if not probably 98%. So moving him around and filling in for and matching sides, it's going to be interesting to watch. But without a doubt, they are in a better place at outside linebacker without TJ Watt. Now they've got to prove it on the field.
You're right. And Highsmith has to be large. The D-line has to step up. They have to collapse the pocket. I mean, we're kind of getting into the Bills preview, but I think Pittsburgh can collapse the pocket against some of those guards that they have, especially Torrance over there at right guard. But yeah, I mean, Herbig, that battle against the right tackle, if he's over there, we don't know exactly how many snaps he'll play on that side, but Spencer Brown, he's a really big guy. He's like 6'7", 6'8" with 34-inch arms. So can you handle him in the run game, and can you not get swallowed up? But then also in pass protect, when he's pass protecting, when Herbig rushes, can you dip under? Can you have that rip move or speed move that you talked about and be able to flatten in corner that Herbig does so well? Or will Brown be able to seal him upfield and kind of engulf him early and win the rep? That's going to be pretty critical in this one. So that'll be a really interesting matchup to watch. I think the snaps that Herbig gets on Spencer Brown. But yeah, I mean, obviously the pass rush has to be there. It can't be as invisible as it was when Watt went down last year.
And you got to get Josh Allen in situations where he has to hold on to the football to get after him anyway. And he's been bleeding out of some against the Dolphins. I thought overall the Dolphins did a pretty good job of getting pressure on him. He just did a good job of avoiding it for the most part, whether taking off with his legs or getting out on the edge and making some plays. But also that's when he's made some mistakes too, is when he does try to get outside the pocket and play hero ball. But look, they need a collective effort out of Herbig, Golden, and Highsmith.
They do. All right, Dave, before we get into previewing this game some more, let's take a pause and come back with our beat writer of the week. That is Matt Perino. He covers the Bills for Syracuse.com. News for Buffalo, has the Shout podcast. You can follow him on Twitter, Matt Perino. That's Parrino. Let's take a pause and come back with Matt.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday. It is Super Wild Card Weekend in the NFL. It is Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. And to help preview the game with us, we of course always have a beat writer who covers the opposition on. This week, a friend back on. He's been on before. You'll probably recognize him. I'm talking about Matt Parrino. Matt covers the Buffalo Bills for Syracuse.com. He also is the host of the Shout podcast, and I think does some work for News for Buffalo as well. So welcome back to the show, Matt Perino. Welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Oh, it's good to be back. I always enjoy our conversations, and obviously we should have a fun and potentially weather-impacted game to talk about on Sunday.
Yeah, let's start there, Matt. Alex and I were trying to discern. Alex lives in Pittsburgh. I live in Las Vegas. A little bit different there, but you're obviously up there in upstate New York and all. What do you expect to see on Sunday when it comes to the weather and maybe snow fall them out and when the miles per hour of the wind?
Yeah, so it's supposed to be about 20 miles per hour winds like regularly, with gusts up to, I've seen as high as 60 miles per hour. And I've never seen in a game them reach that high. Sometimes those are, up on the ski slopes, and you probably get closer to 40 mile per hour wind gusts like on the ground, which when they're swirling around inside of the stadium, I mean, that's pretty significant. So I think it's going to be difficult for both of the passing games, the kicking games, which could, turn this into more of which team can, dominate the trenches and be able to run the ball. And, it's not even just about like getting down to the 20 or the 30 in this kind of game. It's like who can get down and score touchdowns, because the kicking game is going to be so erratic with the weather. So it's going to be interesting. And it's Buffalo, though. Like sometimes there's these catastrophic weather predictions, and then it ends up not being the same. It's, lake effect snow, as I'm sure Alex knows, like, it's very temperamental. That it depends on where the band sits when it hits. So we won't really know until Sunday, but there's a chance that it could be like really bad.
We're getting a 2-for-1 today, Alex. We get a meteorologist along with some sports here for sure. Let's go to the Bills injury report next. Now, look, obviously the Steelers are impacted, not going to have T.J. Watt for this game, and that's obviously a big injury. But when you turn things around, look at the Bills injury report here, and I think even Stephon Diggs kind of hinted during his press conference yesterday that the Bills are unlikely to have Gabe Davis, who injured his knee against the Bills there, and Davis obviously hasn't practiced these first 2 days, and I think Tyrell Dotson, their linebacker there, who injured his shoulder against the Dolphins, doesn't kind of look like he's going to go as well too. Rasul Douglas, the cornerback, I think was injured against the Bills, doesn't look like he's going to go. How do you see that shaking out on the Bills side when it comes to injuries? And I guess Ty Johnson, even though he's kind of, I think, third on the running back list, dealing with a concussion. I think he's done some kick returning for them on top of it. So give us a little bit of a preview of how you expect this to shake out on the Friday injury report.
Yeah, so I think you're pretty on the money there. I think Douglas, Davis, and Dotson are definitely trending in a bad direction. And listen, I'd say Douglas of the three is the most highest profile player, the most impactful player that they'll miss. And that's crazy to think about, I know, from a Steelers perspective, because you remember Gabe Davis having the game that he did last season, but he's just been so hot and cold. And Trent Sherfield came in this last game, and they signed him from the Miami Dolphins last year, and I felt like he fit into the role almost perfectly. He's a great blocker, which is what Gabe Davis is really known for. And some of the stuff that the Bills are doing in the passing game with Davis out, I feel like it pushes the emphasis a little bit more towards Dalton Kincaid, their rookie tight end, who I believe they want to continue to get even more involved in the passing game. And with those targets, Gabe Davis is second on the team in targets, not there. You don't have to feed Trent Sherfield. You can now spread those among Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, their really young second-year receiver. He's been really exciting this year in a limited role. I think it was Ben Solak from The Ringer put out a stat last week that Khalil Shakir, he ranks number 1 in the NFL in percentage of receptions that have gone for either a first down or a touchdown this season. And so he's a guy that I think the Bills want to get more involved. And with Davis out of the picture, that's what they can do. On the defensive side, they're going to go with Balin Spector, most likely, second-year guy out of Clemson, just like a firecracker of a linebacker, very inexperienced. He's been trying to get up to speed on both positions, the middle linebacker position and on the outside. And then they have Dane Jackson, who to me is like the modern version of Levi Wallace in this defense, like a guy that, a late round draft pick. Levi was an undrafted guy, but they can rely upon when they need him. But there's always seems to have been better options and guys that, that they can play, but they're not available. So Dane Jackson will get the call. He's a really good tackler, which I think you'll need in this game anyway.
Before I turn things over to Alex here for his first set of questions here, both these teams, turn loose their offensive coordinators during the season, and boy, things have turned around specifically for Buffalo over this run here. And Alex had the stat last night. The NFL's most rushing attempts from weeks 12 to 18. The Steelers 231, I think, are tops, and Buffalo is second at 220 rushing attempts. So both these teams have focused on running the football since turning their coordinators loose. Talk a little bit about, if you will, the kind of the metamorphosis or what you have seen with this offense since Dorsey went out the door here.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is Joe Brady taking over the job, seeing that there was a change made. I mean, the Bills threw the ball a lot through 12 games, and I wonder how much this isn't Sean McDermott's philosophy or imprint kind of getting stamped down on this team. And Joe Brady is a guy that I think even tried to run the ball in Carolina a bit. And I think you have to have multiple pitches when you get to the playoffs. I mean, if you're just throwing gas, and obviously the fastball for the Bills is their passing game, teams are going to figure it out. Teams are going to figure out a way to stop it. So I think that they've tried different variations of their run game. They're very creative with how they run. They've run out of they've run out of offset fullback. They've run out of shotgun pistol. They do some jet sweep stuff, not as much as in years past. I thought that Brian Dable, he really mixed things up in the motion game. We haven't really seen that quite as much. So I'll be interested to see if the Bills, if they have to run, how successful that is when the other team knows it's coming, because their offensive line is more predicated on speed and athleticism for setting things up. They always have their tackles kind of moving out, pulling and trying to get downhill to use their speed and quickness, as opposed to just being able to overpower a defensive front with just brute strength. So they've definitely tried to run it a little bit more. They have Leonard Fournette, who, I think he played his second game last week. So he's very fresh. I wonder if he doesn't get deployed in a heavier role alongside James Cook, especially if it's tough sledding out there.
And they call him Playoff Lenny for a reason. So we'll see if that pops up in this game.
Exactly.
Matt, you mentioned him, James Cook, a big breakout season. What has he shown to give the coaches the confidence in feeding him the football? He's had a really good year, doesn't get the love because Josh Allen gets all the attention, but Cook seems to be a really strong runner.
Yeah, so I think James Cook has had a really surprising year. Like, I think a lot of people were like high on him coming into the season, but the Bills just have never had a back have this kind of impact since they drafted Josh Allen. The problem lately for Cook has been just some drops in the passing game. Like when they drafted him, one of the things that Brandon Beane talked so much about was his ability in the passing game to be able to impact games. And he's had 2 key drops in games over the last month where you start to wonder, like, all right, is this something that's going to be a problem with Josh Allen maybe not trusting him in big spots because he's had such bad drops? I mean, they had, before the half against the Dolphins, down a score, they had a touchdown. I mean, James Cook beat his guy. It was a beautiful throw from Allen. He just simply dropped it. There was wasn't a 50-50 ball. It was just simply a drop. And so in the run game too, like when they run out of Allen under center, I feel like James Cook hasn't been as effective as they have been when they try to get him out to the outside because he's obviously a speed back. So I wonder if the weather impacts, his usage and his effectiveness in this game. But overall, to your point, he's been really good and a guy that he's not lacking for confidence. I mean, we just talked to him yesterday and, asked him about that drop. And he was like, I didn't even think about it after that play. And whether or not that's true or not, I mean, that's the mindset that he goes into the game with. And he's an important piece of their offense because I think if the weather's not an absolute like snowstorm blizzard, like he puts the defense in a bind when he's out there. And they've been running a little bit more 2 running back sets with Fournette out on the field with him, which I think is interesting. And we'll see if they do that a little bit more too.
Stephon Diggs' numbers for the season still look like typical Stephon Diggs numbers, but the latter half of the year, he's been pretty quiet. What do you attribute that to? Is there any reason why his production has seemingly been almost cut in half compared to the first 6-7 weeks of the season?
Well, lately it's been because they've missed on a couple deep balls. I mean, the last 2 weeks, Allen underthrew him against the Patriots. It would have been a 70-yard touchdown, and it just fell into the back of the defensive back. Then this last week, he beat Jalen Ramsey in one-on-one coverage badly. Like he was probably 5 or 10 yards down the field, and Josh Allen was feeling a little pressure, but he just skied it. I mean, he put it over, overthrew him. So if those 2 plays hit, we're talking about somewhere around 400 yards receiving over the last 2 weeks and probably 2 touchdowns. So I think that they're just scratching the surface of getting this thing back rolling where people expect. And they've also gone through, to your earlier point, a metamorphosis of their offense where they're running the ball at almost the highest clip in the league. And I don't know if the same opportunities have been there in the past game. They've tried to get Kincaid going and Shakir going, and Dawson Knox returned a couple weeks ago and they run a little bit more 12 personnel. So I think it's just been about trying a bunch of different things. At times he calls himself off the field. He's done that since he's been here, but it's been a little bit more this season. And a lot of people were wondering if maybe there was an injury. I don't think that that's the case. I think might be just him trying to keep himself fresh for this stretch run. But the last 2 weeks, from a route running perspective, from a separation perspective, he's looked as good as ever. And I don't know, again, I feel like I'm a broken record coming back to the weather. I don't know if he's going to be a big factor in a blizzard, but if the weather's okay, I expect Diggs to have a good game, especially against that secondary.
Obviously, the Steelers without T.J. Watt, the NFL's leading sacker this year, is going to be a big story, or is a storyline, obviously, ahead of this game. And we saw, if you look at the tape of the Miami Dolphins game, man, they tried to zero blitz Josh Allen quite a bit, and even though they got some pressure, Josh made him pay a couple of times in those instances. And if memory served me, I think I can't remember if the Cook drop was one of those or not, but I know that Miami did try to send pressure. I don't think that's. Is that a way to try to get after him, especially with, do you want to send numbers after Josh Allen? Because it looks as a whole against the blitz. I think it was maybe more of a storyline against him earlier in the season. Now, look, I do think that first interception of that game against the Dolphins down in the red zone was a zero blitz situation, and Josh threw that to the wrong color jersey there. But Should the Steelers just try to rush the four and be kind of creative in that, or should they try to send numbers against him?
I think you could try to send numbers, and I think rookie offensive guard Osiris Torrance, who's having a really solid season, to me where he struggled is when it gets confusing with how the defense lines up and then where they send their pressures from. Like guys dropping out and then other guys filling in and missed assignments. Like that's tough for a young player. If you look at the rest of their offensive line, on the left side, you have Connor McGovern, year 5, Deion Dawkins, year 7, Mitch Morse, year 8. And then on the other side, you have Spencer Brown, who's in year 3, but has started every game his entire career. So there's a lot of experience. So that's, to me, is the area that you could potentially exploit with some creative exotic blitzes. But that actually, the offensive line outside of the last couple of games when teams have been doing some different stuff, has been real strength for them. I mean, they've been really good in pass protection for most of the season. Josh Allen has faced, I think, the least amount of pressures this season that he has his entire career. So that's an area of strength. They're healthy. Deion Dawkins has been dealing with a little deal. He kind of ripped his finger last week, right at like below the knuckles, all the way across. Had to get stitched up. He missed part of the game. He was limited in practice on Wednesday. Then yesterday he missed with an illness. So that's something to track as well. We'll see if he's back out there today. But I think it's got to be a mixture. If you do one thing against this offense, if you do one thing against Josh Allen, he's going to get into a rhythm in the game and he's going to exploit it. So I think it's about being ahead of what they can counter with and adjust to. And I think the Steelers have to be really creative with how they approach him and then make the right adjustments too. Like the Bills are really good, as you saw last week against the Dolphins, figuring out what you do against them for the first 30 minutes and then adjust. And their defense is playing so well over the last 6 weeks that's keeping them in games and allowing them to find what's going to eventually exploit how the defense is playing them. So it's going to be a chess match. It always is. And you have a quarterback in Josh Allen in year 6 who's doing more pre-snap, post-snap, like running the offense than he ever has before, has a really good feel for it. So you got to try to catch him. And when you catch him, you got to make him pay. Like you got to get the turnover. You got to try to score points even, because the defense is playing so well that, last week, if they don't get a short field, they might only give up 7 points in that game against one of the scariest offenses in the league.
Deion Dawkins, speaking of him, what's up with that set of his? And he tends to have a little bit wider spacing as far as the rest of the offensive line. I think he's more of he likes to quick set a lot on that line. Has he been asked a lot? Because you'll see the other offensive linemen with their hands in the dirt, and Deion's kind of in a crouch.
Yeah, this is the best season of his career, and I think it's been a bit of a technique adjustment. He's been working with Aaron Cromer, who's in his second year as offensive line coach. And I'm just thinking about what you're talking about. Dawkins' strength is he's an immovable object. I mean, guys have talked about over the years that defensive linemen that I've talked to that have gone against him. When you get one-on-one with him and you get deep into it and he gets the anchor and set, it's almost impossible to move him. So I think what you're seeing there is an adjustment to get into his spot, beat the defensive lineman to his spot. And especially this week, that's going to be important because Alex Highsmith, dude, watching him on tape, he is about as quick as you'll see. It reminds me a lot of AJ Epinesa, who doesn't have nearly as much of the production, but is similar in terms of the ability to get off and get around that edge so quickly. I mean, it's going to come in handy potentially this week for Dawkins, but you're right. That's not something that he's always done. And it's something that he's been employing this year. And he's given up 1 sack and I think the least amount of pressures in his career. So it's been working.
Matt, as you mentioned, the Bills defense really underrated, 4th best defense in terms of points allowed per game, despite losing Matt Milano, Trey White early in the season. How they persevered despite some of those key defensive injuries.
Yeah, I think they have depth on their defensive line, and that's where it starts. I think for the most part, outside of, I'd say, the last 4 weeks, they've found a way to generate problems on the interior. And so it starts with Ed Oliver. Like Ed Oliver's had a career year, probably should have gotten a little bit more Pro Bowl hype or end of the season hype than he has. The pressures, the career high in sacks, the tackles for a loss. He set career highs everywhere you look up and down his stat sheet. And then on the back end, I mean, Rasul Douglas, I know, he's probably not going to play this week. He was a huge addition. When they lost Trey White, going to Dane Jackson and a very young player in Christian Benford, who has actually developed into quite a burgeoning star for them. I mean, you go back and watch his last 2 games. I think he's got like 90 PFF overall grades. His coverage grades are sensationally starting to turn the ball over a little bit. He's turning into what they hoped Kyer Elam would turn into, their first-round pick from last year, who's buried on the bench. That secondary led by Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, and obviously in the slot, Taron Johnson, who's as good as any defensive back inside in the league. That's been important. Then you look at their linebacking crew. Terrell Bernard has been a revelation. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds, they spent 5 years waiting for him to figure out how to make splash plays. And if you look at the splash play counter, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, Bernard has more this season as a second-year starter than Tremaine Edmonds had in all 3 of those categories through his whole 5 years in Buffalo. And so that's massive. That's a massive adjustment. Then when Milano goes out, they bring in Tyrell Dodson, a former undrafted free agent, who's the 3rd highest graded PFF linebacker in football this year. Like, it's wild. They develop players really well. Sean McDermott has finally gotten a really good feel for his defense. He's been more aggressive too. If you notice, their blitz percentage, while not a ton higher over the last 6 games, the effectiveness, how they're landing and how they're affecting quarterbacks has changed dramatically. So he's very creative in how he sends them. And he's got 3 guys who are elite blitzers: Terrell Bernard, Jordan Poyer, and Taron Johnson. And Poyer is playing up in the box much more because on passing downs, they're going to a dime look with Taylor Rapp, who came over from the Rams. And that has been just an absolute revelation for their defense.
Yeah, the experience in that secondary of Hyde and Poyer, I mean, those guys have been playing football for a long time. It's going to make this one a challenge. But you mentioned Teron Johnson, the slot corner, and what makes Buffalo so unique is, as you know, they're a nickel team. They're 4-2-5. They're not going to be in their base too much, especially with the injuries at inside linebacker. If Pittsburgh were to go heavy and play their brand of football, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, bring in extra tight ends, do you think Buffalo will stay in the nickel? What will it take to put Buffalo into their kind of, true 4-3 base defense?
So I don't see a scenario where they're going to take Taron Johnson off the field because he plays like a linebacker. Like he's such a crazy hybrid that he can go one play and defend Tyreek Hill one-on-one, and then the next play is in the box making a tackle for a loss on a running back. So he's very valuable. The one thing I think that they could throw in is a wrinkle. They could go heavy on the inside and maybe play 3 defensive tackles. They never do that. They've never done that under Sean McDermott. But if the weather calls for it and it's going to be this like grinded out kind of play, like some kind of 5-man front would make a lot of sense. They have Linval Joseph, who's been inactive the last couple of weeks. I think they could potentially Daquan Jones returned a couple weeks ago. So Joseph's been the odd man out. But Joseph's strength is as a run defender. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have 5 defensive tackles active for this game. Von Miller obviously has struggled to get back to form. And we saw last week a little bit of a glimmer of the player that he used to be on the final drive, where he made a couple of plays and had a really good pressure on what was a near interception on a Tua throw, and thought he had a decent pass rush on the next play too. They're almost holding him out most of the game and just trying to deploy him in the fourth quarter. And I think they're liking that approach, but a lot of fans have been impatient when it comes to Von Miller because obviously $20 million and it just hasn't been an impact on most games. But I wouldn't be surprised if they try something different depending on how the game plays out. But if it's just a regular weather game and it's not too much affected by that, I don't think they'll go too much away from what they do.
Matt, do you expect them to still be predominantly zone heavy on defense. At least try to maybe play some too high safety stuff, and unless the Steelers are able to start running effectively to get one of those safeties down in the box. Is that kind of the way you're expecting this to start out, or will the weather and the Steelers' predicted game plan of just trying to bludgeon them with the run, will we see stacked boxes right out to shoot from this defense?
That's a good question. I think Sean McDermott would probably end up doing the opposite of what I predict, because they do try to change things up quite a bit. I do think the Bills' offense, the way that this has worked, I know they were down last week, but the Bills' offense tries to get out so that teams have to pass against them, because that's when they can kind of settle into their zone looks and disguise everything pre-snap and put especially young, inexperienced quarterbacks in a bind. And while Mason Rudolph's obviously not young, it's been a while since he's played, and he hasn't taken a lot of chances. He hasn't put the ball in jeopardy. But I know the weather was really horrible last week for them. But when you see six fumbles in a game, your eyes go wide, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's something they've been working on all week. They've been a very opportunistic defense. I think they're third in the league in total takeaways. They force a lot of fumbles. So I think that, to me, those zone is the play, because, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, those are guys that I don't know if they have the horses to play man against those wide receivers. And we've seen over the last couple of weeks, if they get by their man, it's absolutely curtains. So I think they still stay with the too high look. They go with a lot of zone, but they'll dress it up. They'll play a lot of different, throw a lot of different looks at them and try to confuse Rudolph. And that's what this defense does so well. I mean, Tua was talking about it last week. It's like you think they're doing one thing, and then the snap happens and they've changed it. I could see Sean McDermott kind of cycling through a ton of different looks for this game.
And what's a critical level if this defense does not have Tyrell Dotson and Rasul Douglas? How impactful is that in this game?
It's definitely impactful because they've been playing so many snaps, and they've been a part of this defense that's played so well. But they have guys that they can fit in. I mean, Tyrell Dotson was an afterthought. He lost the middle linebacker competition to Terrell Bernard halfway through training camp, and everybody forgot about him. Nobody was thinking about him. Nobody talked about him. So if you would have told me Balin Spector or Dorian Williams, the rookie, would have gone in for Matt Milano when he got injured, I would have said, okay, So he's played amazing, and he's had this unbelievable impact. But I don't think it'll be that big of a drop off, only because I think, not to downplay Dotson's season, but I almost feel like it's more of a reflection of the scheme and the coaches than it is anything else. So I think that they'll get somebody else in there. They'll have him coached up. Terrell Bernard was talking about Spector this week and said he's been amazed at how keenly he's been studying both positions, depending on where he would be needed eventually, and how prepared he was when he got thrown into the fire against Miami halfway through that game. So Douglas, to me, is the bigger part, because he leads the Bills in interceptions, and he's only played for them about half of the season. Dane Jackson, very game kind of player, but not the same kind of ball hawk or even a guy that generates turnovers in the same way. So they'll feel it, but I don't think it's the kind of drop off. Even with all these guys out, I still don't think it's the kind of effect that you like on the other side with Watt being out.
Man, we didn't even get to talk about the tight ends on the Buffalo side of the football with really Kincaid and Knox, and even I think Quentin Morris over there. And the Steelers have struggled against tight ends this year, and but Alex and I will probably talk a little bit about that in our preview here. Matt, tell me why the Bills, especially with the weather and all like this, why the Bills, why people should lay the 9.5 or 10 against the Steelers in this game.
Well, on the road for Mason Rudolph in this kind of environment, it's gone so well for him, right? But this is a defense that really confuses quarterbacks, and it takes advantage of opportunities. And up front, like Daquan Jones, this is going to be his third game back. And when he left the Bills, in week 4 or week 5, excuse me. He was the number 1 or number 2 graded defensive tackle as a pass rusher in the league. And he's just getting himself ramped back up. So you're going to see a better version of him. You're going to see Ed Oliver on the inside. You're going to see some of these young players. I mean, they're such a good running team, the Steelers, but Greg Rousseau is one of the best young run defending edge rushers in the NFL. And his length is unbelievable. I mean, if he gets off of a block, off of the snap, it doesn't matter if the run's going to the complete other side and it's a wide run. He's going to get down that line and with his length affect the play. So I just think that there's more answers for the Bills in this game. And then offensively, to our earlier conversation, they have run the ball better. And I think they can run the ball in different ways against this team and, utilize what you just mentioned, their tight ends in the short and intermediate area. Khalil Shakir with a larger role. That's where he works. That's where he eats. And even Stephon Diggs, I mean, outside of those long balls, he's really been effective in the short area of the field. And there's been an emphasis on that. I think Josh Allen knows he's got to take care of the football. He had a couple plays last week where you kind of just scratch your head a little bit, and he's that kind of ride. So it's a roller coaster every week with him. But the good is so so high, so good. And then him as a runner. Josh Allen is a runner. Like if the Steelers somehow shut down James Cook and Leonard Fournette and Ty Johnson or Latavius Murray, you still got to deal with Josh Allen as the runner. And that to me is the ultimate weapon in a game with weather that the Bills still have in their favor.
All right, Matt, how do you see this one going on Sunday here? Potentially in a snowy, windy day. How about what do you have as a score prediction here, and what do you think the Steelers need to do to win this game?
So I have the Bills winning actually right on the spread there, 27-17. I think that they'll be effective in the passing game, and I know that's way over the total. The total's like absolutely shrunk, but I think the Steelers are going to be able to run the ball a bit. I think they'll be able to score a couple touchdowns here. I think it's probably going to be a closer game than the 27-17. Maybe that's a late touchdown or something like that. But I think for the Steelers to win this game, they got to force turnovers. When the Bills force turnovers, they're not the same team. They play games much closer. And then Mason Rudolph has to absolutely take care of the football and not give the Bills offense any short fields. I mean, that they have one of the best young kickers in the league in Tyler Bass. And I know the weather's supposed to be bad, but he's kicked in Buffalo. He's kicked in the wind. He's kicked in the weather. I think that's a real advantage for the Bills as well. So I think the Steelers just have to play, a perfect game on both sides of the ball and do what they do best, which is not, make any mistakes that allow the other team to just run away with a game and hope that they could be close in the fourth quarter and steal one.
All right. Everybody should be following Matt on Twitter/X at Matt Perino. That's Parrino. You can read his work at Syracuse.com. Tell us what's going on this weekend at Syracuse.com. And I believe you have a podcast as well.
Yes, sir. We'll have you covered at the website. You can find our coverage there. And then the podcast, we already have, I think, 3 episodes up now. We'll have our big preview show Saturday night. If you're coming into town for the game, come on out to Wingnuts. It's one of the best chicken wing places in Buffalo. We do a live show there once a month, and we're doing the live show there this Saturday night. We'll preview Bills versus Steelers. We had a Patriots fan come out a couple weeks ago when we did the show. It was fun. Fans get to mingle with each other. It's a good time. We're going to watch Dolphins and Chiefs after that.
I think everybody listening to this is boycotting buffalo wings right now. Hey, Matt, you're absolutely fantastic. And have been every time you've been on the show. We appreciate the extra time today for this important super wild card weekend matchup. Best of luck this weekend, and we look forward to having you back on the Terrible Podcast sometime down the road.
Thanks for having me, guys. And real quick final note, it's okay to come out and have the wings because in Buffalo, we don't call them buffalo wings. They're just wings. Okay. So you don't have to, you can partake in what I think is the best, niche food in the world. I mean, buffalo wings in Buffalo, there's nothing like it.
Fantastic. Matt, thanks for your time.
Take care, guys.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Matt Perino. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Parrino, Parrino. Let him know you heard him on the show and appreciate him taking up some time here in his busy schedule getting ready for this playoff game. Again, he writes for Syracuse.com, covers things for News for Buffalo, and has the Shout podcast. So appreciate Matt and his terrific insight, Dave.
Absolutely. Glad to have him back on the podcast again. And if you get a chance listening this before Sunday, shout him out on Twitter/X if you get a chance, please.
All right, Dave, let's you and I preview this game and kind of continue the conversation we had before we took the pause and spoke with Matt. And I think the parallels between these two teams are really interesting. Buffalo was 6-6. They felt done for. There were questions about their head coach, Sean McDermott, and his future. They find their run game. They go on a 5-game winning streak. They make the playoffs on the final day of the season. Pittsburgh, and Buffalo fired their OC earlier in the season too. Pittsburgh, they fire their OC mid-season. They're 7-7. Some questions about Tomlin. They revive their running game. They win their final 3. They make the playoffs on the final Sunday of the season. So they're different in obvious ways in terms of pass game and those types of things. But just kind of big picture, the Buffalo, they're not that far apart.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit on me there. It says I've got some low system resource. I got the gist of what you said. Look, Buffalo's going to come out and attempt to run the football. You'll see their tackles get on the move. Specifically, you'll see Deion Dawkins out in space. Heck, they'll even pull center mid. Some tosses. They like to run that kind of crack toss and a regular toss. They like to get those athletic offensive linemen carrying up their run schemes. And Cook is a guy that can be dangerous for you out on the edge, especially on some of those tosses. If they get key blocks, I think their wide receivers would do a good job of trying to lock up on people as well too. So if you're the Steelers defense and your first and foremost aspect of this is trying to shut down that running game, specifically on the early downs, and then off of that, you have to watch out for the design runs with Josh Allen. That's going to be a chore. And we haven't even gotten to the passing game, and Josh Allen is obviously one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Hopefully, the elements will tamp down the deeper ball, specifically if they're not having a guy like Gabe Davis out there, but Diggs is a guy that can get downfield. Khalil Shakir can do stuff either underneath or down the field as well. And then, as we've already talked several times in this episode, the tight ends. But it's got to start on first and second down with stopping the run, and more than likely, runs with some offensive linemen on the move.
Sure. I've made the point a couple times before, but I'll repeat it once more, is I think there's a bit of a national idea, maybe in Steelers kind of fandom, that Buffalo's this wide open, passing attack, spread the field out. And they can be that for sure, but they're not always that. They can be a power run team. They use a 6 offensive linemen quite a bit in David Edwards. They're going to run multiple tight ends. They have a fullback in Reggie Gilliam that they'll use. Occasionally they'll go max protect and run play action off of that and take a couple deep shots that way. So they can be a power physical team. They got some big guys up front. Torrance is a big guy at right guard. Mentioned Brown at right tackle, Dawkins at left tackle. They can have a similar personality as Pittsburgh. And Josh Allen, 15 rushing touchdowns this year. That ties an NFL record for most rushing scores by a quarterback. And you mentioned the dart scheme with the backside tackles pulling, and their RPO game and their bash game off of that. There's a lot of layers to that run game. So point is, Buffalo can be just as rough and tumble and physical as Pittsburgh is on their side of the ball.
Yeah, you have to make the tackle. You can't let the yards after first contact happen in this one. You got to be a sure tackling team. They have success with the quick RPO, especially out on the edge. If they get the numbers out there, I think they made Miami miss on a couple of those plays as well too. They do some stuff with the rub routes, especially against man type situations to get some guys open. They missed some explosive plays in that game against the Dolphins. On one of those, they got the Dolphins defensive backs to collide there and ended up in a bust down the field. I think, who was that? Shakir, I think, had that one. I'm not sure you want to blitz Josh Allen a lot in this game. The Dolphins, what was it, like 6 times? The Dolphins sent 0 blitz after Josh Allen, and I think even that account Cover One on Twitter, who follows the Bills, does a good job saying that Josh Allen's throughout the season made strides when it comes to the blitz. But rolling this thing back, you got to stop their ground game, because if their ground game gets going and they get into those 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5 or less situations, that's when they're more apt to use the play action type situation to open up some of those quick glance routes and all like that. I mean, this is a dangerous offense, even in the elements. But if you don't shut down the run game and let a guy like Cook and Fournette, for that matter, you call him, playoff Lenny there, it will make for a long day.
Yeah, you wonder if Fournette's going to make a bigger impact in this game. There's a guy that's had success against Pittsburgh running the football. That was kind of more in his prime, but Fournette's had that success, and he's had playoff success, 9 career postseason touchdowns. So maybe not going to get the vintage Fournette stuff, but a big physical back in a game like this, it probably plays in his favor relatively well. Situationally, they're strong. They're the number 1 third down offense in football, converting essentially half the time. They're 6th in red zone play. And the last note from a run game perspective is, anytime it's a weighty situational moment, goal line, 3rd and short, 4th and short, and they're an empty, alert quarterback draw, quarterback power with Josh Allen and the twitch push, as you mentioned earlier in the show as well. So anytime they're an empty, you got to have that thought in the back of your head. Is this a design keeper for Josh Allen?
Yeah, and I wouldn't imagine Steve's going to play a lot of man in this one either, right?
No, they're going to be in zone probably quite a bit. I would probably suspect eyes on the quarterback to try to, plaster whenever he starts escaping and leaving the pocket. And they've been a zone team for the back half of the year.
If we're talking about the Steelers coming out of this game with a win, my thoughts on this is, man, we probably need to be talking about the interior of the Steelers defensive line. Keanu Benton, it'd be a great time for him to have the single best, and he's had some nice showings throughout the season here, but it would be nice for him to have his best game of the season. Larry Ogunjobi, Cam Hayward, obviously, that's going to be an interesting matchup with Cam Hayward versus Connor McGovern in this one, Alex. If you want to talk about potential weakest a weak link on that offensive line, I mean, of the Bills, it might be both of their guards in rookie Cyrus. Cyrus, is Torrance a rookie?
Yeah, he's a rookie.
Yeah,
it's Cyrus. I keep wanting to call him Osiris Torrance and make him Irish, but it's Cyrus O Torrance.
And Connor McGovern, I think could be a weak part in this as well too. Look, they gave up some interior pressures in that game against the Dolphins. Now, once again, the Dolphins did have a concerted effort in 2nd and long, 3rd and long situations of sending numbers, and I think you have to pick your spots when you do this against him. I don't think you're going to see the Steelers go the entire game and not send numbers after them, but you better choose your spots wisely, because I feel like Josh Allen's been good as the season has progressed against numbers overall.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think the interior rush has to be there to collapse the pocket. That's going to help the outside linebackers a little bit more. And I think you have some winnable matchups there. Ogunjobi on the rookie, the right guard, or Torrance is going to be one that they can exploit. Or Ogunjobi has to play his best football. It's been a bit better the last 3 weeks, but I want to see more from him. He's got to have a marquee kind of game. Hayward's got to show that bull rush. The Hayward bull rush has not been the same. Obviously, we're dealing with the groin injury, and you expect maybe some rust to him not being 100% healthy, but he's got to be vintage Hayward in terms of that long arm stab and that bull rush that really pushes and collapses the pocket on Josh Allen. Personally, Dave, I would probably blitz a bit more than you're willing to. I think you have to try to almost treat this a little like Lamar Jackson in terms of blitzing, not just to get pressure, but to contain and constrict Josh Allen and make him play from the pocket, which he can do, but of course he is incredibly dangerous out of structure, out on the move, and to try to compensate for the loss of TJ Watt. I think rushing your standard 4 is not going to be the most effective way. You got to mix it up. You can't just do one thing. You said that. Matt said that. There's going to be some safe 4-man pressures with nickel corners and off-ball linebackers that Pittsburgh's been running more in recent weeks. But I think I think Allen's had some problems against the blitz still. He threw that pick pick against Miami on cover zero,
Cover
right?
zero, yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you have to go cover zero, but he's had some issues against that and some communication type problems. And, you have to pick and choose your spots, as you said. But I just think sitting back and, rushing 4, even safe pressure with 4, you can't do that all game. You got to find some ways to rush 5 occasionally.
And look, if you're going to twist and blitz and stunt up front and all like that, Josh Allen is good at finding the escape lane in there. So you're trying to have these 10 sticks up there with the plates on top of them and go back, and keep all these plates spinning. There's a lot to do on the defensive side of football. Not only stopping a run, but in the passing game. Now, look, I'm less afraid of him. To me, I'd like to take my chances with him trying to extend plays outside of the pocket and throwing the football. Now, obviously,
that's what he does. That's what he's made his living off.
I know, but in these conditions, I think he's more apt to put one up in the air where it doesn't belong.
Yeah, I get that. And he's turnover prone. They've turned the ball over 28 times. He's fumbled. I mean, and I mentioned the magic number. You got to get him with 2 turnovers. He's 1-3 this season when he's turned the ball over at least twice. So that's a number this defense has to hit.
Look, he can't be comfortable in the snow. Plain and simple. You got to constrict the pocket. If you get him in these 2nd and 3rd down situations, and look, just getting to him isn't enough because you got to put him on the ground as well. And he is going to take off with the football. And my suggestion when he does is hit him. He invites that physicality. Give it to him.
Yeah, for sure. Legally, of course, we're saying here.
Right.
But he's not one that slides easily. And, even when he tries to go out of bounds to try to inch out those extra couple of yards or two. The concern is I imagine he's going to be pretty comfortable in the snow. He's played at Wyoming, he's played in Buffalo for years. It's not anything new to him or to this team. So, yeah, can you make it uncomfortable? But I think you're right. I think interior pressure, Pittsburgh has to have it. There's just no bones about it. But I think they can get it based on who they have and who Buffalo has.
And look, ball searching is a key in this, especially when rushing. You have to have eye because you're not going to probably get to him a lot in this game when it comes to a sack. But when you do get to him, your eyes have got to be on that football and try to get that football out of there. And then conversely, we've seen this Steelers defense do a good job with against trying to rip these balls out. Eric Rowe with the punch. Mark Robinson got a helmet on a football that knocked one out. It just feels like the ball has got to come out of that offense turnover wise. Not just once, but at least twice in this game for the Steelers to have a chance. And yes, turnovers are impactful in every football game, but it really, really does feel so that you're going to need a short field or two and steal a possession or two and get them all off the field. So you've got to ball hunt specifically when rushing the passer with Josh Allen. He's put the ball in the opponent's hands, not only in passing game, but in sack situations a couple of times.
Yeah, including once against the Dolphins in that Week 18 win. From a receiver standpoint, I know Diggs' production is not what it was to begin the year, but as Matt said, some really close, just near misses, so to speak, the last couple of weeks. Kincaid, how do you stop Dalton Kincaid, Dave, with the inside linebackers still hurting? I think Minka's going to be on him in some situational football. 3rd down, some people have pushed back on that and said, don't, restrict Minka to play man coverage, let him roam. But I don't know who else is going to try to, match up on a guy like Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, and we've seen the tight ends do work against the Steelers before, and you'd have to think that, in the shorter to intermediate passing game in the middle of the field, you're going to see them try to do that in this game too, especially if the Steelers play a lot of zone, which we both, I think, expect them to do. And then Diggs over there. Good luck, Joey. Because quite honestly, you're going to have him on the island quite a bit in this game, I think. And you cannot let any of these wide receivers, and even if Gabe Davis doesn't play, it doesn't seem like he will, you can't let the 7-yard pass end up 40 yards down the field.
Yeah, and the concern is with Porter, he's had a really strong season, just the route running, the separation ability of Stephon Diggs, can Porter keep up with that? You've seen Cooper give Porter more fits, and DK Metcalf in some of the short area quick game give Porter some fits. And so when it's that kind of backyard fight against D-Hop or some jump ball situations or real contested moments, Porter wins those. That's his calling card. Can he handle some of the different alignments when Diggs is lined up in the slot? He's even in the backfield occasionally, Diggs is. And so they really do some kind of different stuff with him. I'm not saying Porter can't do that. He's traveled and he's used to lining up in slots and defending the entire field. But against a real shifty route runner, a real nuanced guy like Diggs, it's going to be a big challenge, as Teryl Austin indicated.
Can't let this team down in the red zone, especially the low red zone. They're very, very effective down there. They'll run that RPO glance route with that. They will leak these tight ends out on you. They will run rubs down in there for easy touchdowns. So not allowing them down in the red zones, low red zone specifically, has got to be a focus point. The best defense that you can have probably in this game, especially with the elements that we are expecting, are 75-yard fields.
Yeah, and a really healthy offense on Pittsburgh that keeps Josh Allen on the sideline. That might be your best defense, might be your offense in this one. So probably a good time to transition to the Buffalo Bills defense, which for my money has been underrated this year despite all the injuries that they've had. They're the 4th-ranked scoring defense in football. They take the ball away at a really high clip. They're really aggressive, attacking. They swarm to the football really well, Dave. I think just the way they play, their attitude is really impressive on tape. What are your first impressions when you watch this Bills defense?
Got to run at him. And you go back, you watch the Dolphins game, and the Dolphins are more of the fake pitch, and they try to kill you with the speed, specifically on the edges. And why wouldn't you when you have some of the pieces that they have in there? And then after watching that all 22, I rolled back to the game against the Patriots, because the Patriots, especially with Ezekiel Elliott and with what they have been trying to do as of late, are more interior. The Steelers are better when they just attack the middle of the line, and I think that's how you attack this Buffalo Bills defense, specifically if they don't have a guy like Terrell Dotson in there. Overall, you have got to get your 12 and 13 personnel out on the field and win the way you have won these last several weeks. You have got to manhandle them, especially if they're going to run a lot of that nickel defense out there against them. You have got to force your will on this defense in the running game, between the tackles. Yes, you can make some waves with them, I think, with some of these Zorro tosses and all like that. So you're obviously going to have to mix them in there. But boy, I want to see some power. I want to see some inside zone. I want to see these offensive linemen getting to the second level and getting on some extra bodies. If you look at this Bills defense as a whole, when it comes to 10-yard runs, specifically over the last several weeks, they can be run on, Alex. Mm-hmm. And I think the way you do that is between the tackles with big bodied people. If the Steelers are not able to establish a running game, specifically in between the tackles, it's going to make for tough sledding in this overall. It's that simple. You have to be able to run the football, and you have to not change and get away from the thing. You don't be cute about this. Everybody knows what's coming here, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to put it out there and say, stop it. And you go back to that. You can't help but with this being Bills week, to roll back to that game several years ago, 2016, against the Bills in the snow, where Le'Veon Bell, man, how many damn times did he run the football in that game?
How many was it? It was a ton. It was a ridiculous amount.
It was a ridiculous amount of times, and he rushed for 200-something yards in that game. I'll get you specifics here. 38 carries for 236 yards. Now, I don't think Najee's going to have 38 carries in this game, but if you can get 38 carries out of Najee and Jaylen Warren combined, then you're probably going to win this game. Plain and simple here. But this is what the Steelers mentality over the years has been, right? Big bodied backs, physical backs getting into the playoffs, nasty weather, strap them up. Here you go. Try to stop it.
Exactly. I put that on a bumper sticker. It's a long bump. It's a large bumper sticker to put on. It's gonna take up the back of the windshield. But I think 100% right, Dave. I mean, dance with the one who brought you. The run game brought you here. I mean, the weather is gonna play into that even more. Buffalo, they're allowing, I think, 4.5 yards per carry, in part because they play that 4-5. And again, Johnson, really fun player to watch. Really physical nickel corner. Remember him at the Senior Bowl when he was coming out. He was a small school guy. He had some really impressive reps. And so I don't want to diminish the job that he can do. There's a reason why they stay in that personality. The run defense is good enough. I think they have good team run defense. Run fits are sound, and Poyer can stop the run, and Johnson as well. That D-line is pretty strong, too. I mean, Ed Oliver, I think even Poona Ford. No one talks about Poona Ford. He's a really fun player to watch. This dude's like under 6 foot playing D tackle. He's 5'11" and change, and he's just athletic and stout and a hard guy to kind of leverage and get under. But yeah, they've allowed 53 runs of 10 or more yards. Go heavy, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. Impose your will. Your model of winning is to run the ball, win time of possession, grind this game out, keep Josh Allen off the field. You do those things, you're going to keep it close. You're going to be able to have a chance to win this in the final 5 minutes, to make a play late, to go ahead and win this game. So if Pittsburgh can't run the ball early, often, and effectively, they will not win this game.
We have given Tyron Johnson a lot of respect over the years here, and with good reason. I think you recognize him, you're cognizant of him, but you don't be scared of him. He's got to come out of this game earning his keep, along with those off the ball linebackers. You got to make those safeties. They're probably going to come out initially, maybe in some. They're going to play a lot of zone, I think, and why they got to try to keep a lid on this thing. Probably going to see some too deep cover 2 stuff, but I think you're going to see predominant zone in there. You've got to get those safe. You got to have them stacking the box in this for you to take whatever shots you are going to take down the field, and those can be had as well too if you can get them in the right defensive situation. You look at this running game overall, run defense for them with Buffalo, and as of late, these numbers are probably a little less reflective because they're season long numbers. But I think the tape. Now I'll tell you what, that Bills defense was. I thought I was going to. The Bills defense was flying around against New England on the tape, and you didn't get a good sense of just how maybe if the Patriots were able to stick more with more of their inside stuff, you didn't get a good feel of maybe the success in it, because man, that Bills defense was jumping in that game, and the Patriots just couldn't do anything right on the offensive side of football there. But I'm just going to throw some numbers here at you for season long type rushing against this defense. Left guard. Offensive runs to left guard against the Bills. The Bills are 29th ranked defense at 5.2 yards per carry. Up the middle, 21st ranked defense against the runs up the middle, 3.97. Right guard, 27th ranked defense at 4.94 yards a game. You even get over to the right tackle, where obviously the Steelers will have Broderick Jones over there, and probably a tight end with Washington over there. 4.5 yards per carry, 21st ranked defense. This defense, I think, if you keep chipping away at it, can be run against in this game. So that's where I'm looking for these runs to go. Nothing fancy here. Run your power, run your inside zone. Yep. Don't get fancy with the footwork. I mean, you're going to run these counters, you're going to run these split zones. The Steelers have had. It's been nice to see this split zone work, right? You run what you've been running these last 3 weeks with that running game. Keep chipping away with it. Get bodies on bodies, and I think you can have some success.
Power, duo, counter, those are going to be your staple runs in this one. I know it sounds super simplistic and like 1970s, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and you need more than that, but there is no other way you're going to win. Mason Rudolph has to throw the ball 50 times in this game, 45 times in this game. You're just cooked. And Rudolph's played well, but it's just you can't get in that kind of game with Buffalo trying to match attempt for attempt with Josh Allen versus Mason Rudolph. You're just, again, not a shot to Rudolph. It's the same if it was Trubisky or Pickett, anybody versus Allen. you just can't play that game. It was like Mahomes and Ben in 21. Just Mahomes was going to have the advantage. That's how it was. And you got in that kind of situation, you fell behind and you were just kind of screwed at that point. So that's got to be the MO. But when Pittsburgh does throw the football, Dave, how do you attack things? What do you think the thought process needs to be?
If they're going to play a lot of zone, I see if I can't get the football to Pat Freiermuth in this game. I like the fact that we're coming off of a game here where Connor Hayward was used a little bit in the passing game. I think if you do some stuff out of 13 personnel, I think you might see I think that little see something that Najee's been hinting at and all. I think some of that might be revolve around something maybe with Connor Hayward. I think you can do some creative stuff with him with some of that 12 and 13 personnel on the field. But I think Pat Freiermuth, depending on how they want to attack this thing, I think some of these quick slants that you've seen to Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, the quicker kind of passing game, especially if those guys are going to play off of those guys on the outside, and depending on how bad the elements are in this game, if you in the instances that you do get those one-on-one matchups on the outside, specifically if they don't have a guy like Rasul Douglas, they're going to be calculated deep ball shots. But I think as long as the football's, you're not having to throw it 45 yards down the field as opposed to maybe 28 to 35 yards down the field on the outside. That's when you take the shots on the outside. But don't be afraid to use your backs in the check down game. We've seen how effective that can be for the Steelers offense. But I think if we're coming out talking about the Steelers win in this one, I think you're talking about a short game. And I think you're specifically talking about one that emphasizes the use of the tight end.
Yeah, I think trying to find some zone beaters will be key in this one. The yak's going to be important because I imagine there are not going to be a ton of huge plays downfield, maybe something with Pickens, but it might be more yak based where you're, beating zone coverage and turning upfield and making somebody miss and getting a chunk play off of that. That's going to be the overall key.
There will be an explosive play by Connor Hayward in this game.
Ooh.
Now, whether that ends up, how impactful that is, there will be win, lose, draw, whatever. It can't be a draw, obviously, but I have a feeling we're going to be talking about a Connor Hayward play in this game.
I like it. Is this, are we standing on the wheel route or just some sort of explosive play?
Look, they have spammed this split zone so much, right?
Last week, a ton, yeah.
I mean, you can do something off of that, I think. I'm a big fan of the will. Mark my words, we will be talking about it, an explosive play by Connor Hayward.
All right, I love it. But I think, in terms of other things to worry about, I feel like I'm a broken record because every defense, even Pittsburgh now, does these kind of simulated pressures and creeper looks on those third and obvious pass situations where they're going to have 5, 6, 7 defenders up on the line of scrimmage, and you don't know who's going to rush and who's going to drop out. I think Pittsburgh's done a much better job dealing with those things and sorting those things out the last half of the season as compared to the first half of the year. But it's still always going to be an issue when you're on the road. It's loud, there's crowd noise, you're working on silent count. Those type of things are going to be difficult. So how do you handle those pressure, those simulated looks? That's going to be critical. And then also just this reminds me a bit of the Patriots because of the veteran experience they have in the secondary, particularly at safety, where the Patriots had like a Jabril Peppers and somebody that had been playing in the league for a long time, and they could disguise their coverages and rotate late. When you have guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, two guys that have been in the league, just generally speaking, for a long time, but playing together for a long time, they do a great job of spinning late and rotating coverages. And so I know in the Patriots game that was Trubisky at quarterback, Rudolph starting in this one. But how do you handle and how do you identify, both for Rudolph and for the receivers, those late rotations you're likely going to see from a Poyer, from a Micah Hyde, because they really disguise, they don't tip things off well. And that post-snap picture is often going to be much different than what things look pre-snap.
Yeah, and people aren't going to like to hear this, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of middle of the field attacking in this game. I think you want to stay away from some of those guys as much as possible past 12 yards past the line of scrimmage overall. And look, if the Steelers have to come out and throw the football 38, 42, 50 times a game, that's not a recipe for this thing. overall. It's probably going to be more of a concerted passing game, short, crisp passing game overall here. But look, just the recent track record, us talking about the Steelers offense with Mason Rudolph in third and long situations, that doesn't bode very well for this offense, specifically in this game either, because of the play of the secondary and all like that. They're going to do a good job of protecting the sticks. So it's super important that you don't get into 2nd and 8 and the 3rd and 7s and the 3rd and 9 situations like that here. You've got to stay ahead of the chains, and where you kind of pop them for down the field type of throws are on the 2nd and 4s or the 2nd and 3s, those type situations when you're ahead of the chains. That's when I think you can kind of take your shots. But you want them you want to make a concerted effort as much as you possibly can to get the ball in space to Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, whether it be on some of these quick slants that they've run and all like that. So that's how you have to throw it. And you can't be afraid of the check down. And once again, I think for the Steelers to win, I think they have to make a concerted effort to get the ball to their tight ends and to their running backs.
Yeah, and somebody new potentially, Hayward, Washington down the seam. How about that for one attempt? Instead of just the boot game where he's cut his couple of passes this year on. Just a few other notes here on Buffalo more broadly. The punt return, punt coverage, special teams will be so important in this one with the weather. Who can kick in this wind? Who can hold in this wind, snap in this wind, punt in this wind? That's going to be a factor. The Bills had that 95-yard punt return touchdown that really helped them beat Miami. That's going to be critical. You don't want special teams to be able to make a play that changes this whole complexion of the game. Ball security, obviously, but the way that Buffalo just rips and attacks the football with their secondary, with their team swarm defense. They saw on tape how much Pittsburgh fumbled 6 times against Baltimore because of the elements in part, but there's going to be an element and weather issue in this game. So focus on that, obviously. And then just the last stat is, if Pittsburgh can keep this game close, which is how they win 95% of their games, they're going to have the edge. This year, Pittsburgh 9-2 in one possession games, the best mark in football. Buffalo 6-6 in one possession games. Buffalo not typically, but they win a bunch of games by more than one possession, really taking control of things. So if Pittsburgh can keep it close, that should give them the advantage.
Yeah, you can't fall behind in this one. And once again, get in a situation where you have to get away from your running game. And Buffalo's game plan is, man, if we can get them out of their running game, we got this here. Can they block a punt? Can the Steelers do something? Isn't there a punter coming off of AFC Player of the Week or something like that? And obviously they had the big punt, the Miami out kicked their coverage on that one, and that one got taken. That was a huge turning point in that game. Was that punt return? Because for a little while, it looked like Miami might have them there. Look, this has got to be an old-fashioned, ugly 17-14 game for the Steelers to win it.
Yeah, it's the old rock'em, sock'em robot type of game. That's what it's got to be. It's got to be a trench warfare game that goes in Pittsburgh's favor. I think there's a path to victory here more than what I think the national media is giving them credit for. I think what Pittsburgh does well, they can do against Buffalo, and the elements and the injuries that Buffalo has plays in Pittsburgh's favor. Now, again, they're without TJ Watt. Pittsburgh is, and that's, the history without, Watt, what this team's success or lack thereof is. But offensively, I think they actually match up pretty well against the Bills.
I agree, especially if they're able to run in between the tackles. Don't get cute with this. Don't get cute, especially early. Don't get cute with this thing.
All right, Dave, I think we've covered this pretty well enough. So before we make our picks for this game, and I really want to know what direction you're going in, because I have no idea which way you're going to go in terms of who you're going to pick to win this one. But before we do that, and before we make our picks for Super Wild Card Weekend, let's hear from our friends over at MyBookie.
All right, gear up, sports fans. The NFL playoffs are here, and it's time to get in on the action with MyBookie. Don't just watch, score big with exclusive boosted odds and huge prize contests that'll have you feeling the Super Bowl fever before it even hits. Whether you're a seasoned pro or ready to roll for the first time, MyBookie is your ticket to turning your sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. MyBookie has the largest online lineup of odds, contests, and Vegas-style casino games, making it your ultimate destination for all type of fun, 24/7, right at your fingertips. If you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, the wait is now over. Make your winning move today and sign up at MyBookie. Make sure to use promo code TERRIBLE to claim your deposit up to $1,000. That's right, promo code TERRIBLE for an opportunity to boost your betting power today. Experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your own home, because with MyBookie, you can bet anything, anytime, anywhere. So do the right thing. Join MyBookie at mybookie.ag today and be part of the winning team.
All right, Dave, before we make our picks for the Steelers-Bills game, let's make our pick for the rest of Super Wildcard Weekend. There'll be a couple of Saturday games to watch before Pittsburgh kicks things off on Sunday, and then the Monday night game between the Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's go ahead and pick these games.
All right, let's see here. Let's start with the Houston Texans hosting the Cleveland Browns to kick off the weekend. The Browns on the road with Joe Flacco laying 2 points on the road against the Texans.
Man, this one's tough overall. I mean, I give both teams a ton of credit for persevering. CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, DeMeco Ryans, everything the Browns have gone through, obviously. I'll go Cleveland. I think the defense has just been stronger, more impactful. I wonder if they can run the ball and can sustain that. It's going to be a little bit tougher, but I'll go the Browns in this one.
This is Schwartz versus Stroud. This is what this is right here. And the way that defense is, look, I think Flacco can be forced into mistakes. We've seen it so far, but because of their defense, they're able to overcome that kind of stuff. And I'm with you. I wonder if Houston's able to establish any sort of running game in this whatsoever. I think they can get a couple of takeaways maybe, but can they capitalize on them against the Browns defense here? I'm taking Schwartz over Stroud in this one. This is what I boil this game down to. So I'll take Cleveland to win this by a field goal. I don't think it'll be lopsided, but I'll take the Browns lay to 2 points along with you there. The Kansas City Chiefs are hosting the Miami Dolphins. This is the Peacock game. But if I found out yesterday, if you have NFL Plus, I think you can get this on the NFL Plus app, regardless of where you live here. So I just want to throw that out there. Dolphins on the road against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 4.5 point favorites in what's probably going to be an ice bowl, right?
They're saying potentially with the wind chill, I think -30 below, something like that. Some crazy stuff. Yeah, I mean, the easy logic is, can Miami, play in that kind of cold weather? I think maybe they can. I don't want to say that they can't, but yeah, and the Chiefs have had their issues in terms of scoring, but I think the Chiefs defense has stepped up, and Andy Reid in the playoffs with some time to prepare. Give me the Chiefs.
You know what? I think the Dolphins can win this one. I really do. I worry about that. I've bet 4 Chiefs thinking every week that offense is going to come alive. I worry about their offense in this game. Give me the Dolphins in the upset. I'll take the 4.5 points there.
Like it.
Let's see. The rest of the weekend, the Dallas Cowboys are hosting the Green Bay Packers. Dallas are 7-point home favorites against the Pack and Jordan Love, who's played some good football, especially after that from that Steelers game on here. What you got?
He has, and played well to get them into the playoffs. Dallas at home, though. I mean, Dallas in the playoffs can always be tricky, but at home, that's where they thrive. Give me the Cowboys.
Give me the Cowboys lay to 7 points at home. I'm with you on this. The Detroit Lions are hosting the Los Angeles Rams. Detroit favored by 3 at home against the Rams.
Yeah, talk about some storylines in this game. First home playoff game for Detroit since, I think, 1993. Of course, Matthew Stafford coming back to Detroit. And this one's tough. I think the Rams have played really good football and kind of quietly done so. I can't go against Detroit, though, for what this game means to the team, to the city. Give me the Lions.
I'll go against them. I can. I like what the Rams are doing. Puka, how can you not root for that guy? I think just the experience that the Rams have. I think they're going to be able to run the football a little bit better than most think. I understand the Lions are at home. That's why they're 3-point favorites in this. The Rams are going to upset the Lions on the road. I will take the 3 points there. The Buccaneers are hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 3-point road favorites in this one.
Man, I've been waiting for the Eagles to turn this thing around for the entire last month of the season, and they haven't. I just have to think at some point, though, it's going to click when the chips are down. If it doesn't, then, man, look out. So I'm going to say the Eagles tentatively, but the Eagles all the same.
Yeah, man, they got questions on both sides of the football there in Philadelphia, but I do think they get it right. I'm with you on this one there. They forced Baker Mayfield into a couple of hero ball turnovers or something, ends up being the difference in this game. I will take the Eagles and lay the 3 points on the road there. All right. Here we go. This circles us back to the Steelers at the Bills. On Sunday, the Bills are 10-point home favorites in this one. What say you?
Like I said before, I see a path to victory. I think it's more realistic than what the national media seems to be crediting or discrediting, I guess, Pittsburgh for with the run game. I just worry about Pittsburgh's secondary. They become such a zone-heavy team, and it's pretty basic cover 2, cover 3, rotate a little bit, but I just think the Bills' game plan is going to find some exploits in the pass game. Yeah, weather's going to be a factor. I don't know if it's going to impact it so much that neither team can throw, and if any quarterback can be able to throw in these conditions, it's a strong arm guy like Josh Allen. So, I mentioned earlier about the close games. That does work in Pittsburgh's favor, and I still believe that. So, but I still have this one close, but I got Buffalo winning this one 24-16. I just think just a little too much firepower offensively. That defense has been underrated. The pass rush, 54 sacks for the Bills defense this year. That's not being talked about enough. So wrestle with this one. I see the path to victory, but ultimately I couldn't get there to choose Pittsburgh. I got Buffalo winning by 8.
All right.
What is Dave? I have no idea what you're going to pick. I think you're going to pick a close game, but I have no idea which way you're going to actually go.
Alex, 12-year-old Dave showed up out here in Las Vegas this week, and 12-year-old Dave, along with 55-year-old Dave, always likes to overanalyze things at times. I think this is the perfect storm, excuse the pun, here. I think everything leading up to this game, sans obviously the TJ Watt injury, I think a lot of things roll in the Steelers' favor before at least they strap things up here. I think the weather could play a part in this game. If the Steelers are able to run the football effectively early in this game, which I think they're able to do, if they can make Josh Allen make a mistake or two, which obviously are big ifs, and that's what I'm kind of counting on happening in this game. I understand why the Bills are heavy favorites in this game. I think Mike Tomlin has drilled this thing to them. Look, this team has been in the playoffs, as he stated, the last 3 weeks here. 12-year-old Dave would not leave this house this week. I think the Steelers win this game somehow, some way. I think the Steelers win this game, Alex. First playoff. Look, we've talked all season long, or dating back to the preseason. This team, a successful season even after all that we've seen, the craziness, the roller coaster ride that this team has gone through this year. The only way this season is going to be measured as a successful season is this team gets into the playoffs and wins a playoff game, right?
Yep. That's the barrier, the obstacle they've not overcome in their last 3 tries.
I mean, everybody's tired of putting that winning season, Mike Tomlin winning season bumper sticker on their car. Everybody's over that. The way this team is going to be measured in 2023 season is getting in the playoffs, not only getting in the playoffs, but winning a playoff game. Yeah. They're going to have to play a damn near perfect game, but 12-year-old Dave says 17 Steelers, 14 Bills.
I love it. I love the boldness, man. If you call this one, this is a Babe Ruth type moment. So yeah, I mean, I can see it. I just couldn't get myself to that point. And maybe I was slightly influenced because my preseason prediction was for Pittsburgh to go 10-7, make the wild card, and then be one and done. And so I'm kind of partially sticking by that, but also it's mainly for the reasons I mentioned about what the Bills are able to offer. But it's going to be a great game, I think. I think a better game than people anticipate.
Now, if this was a clear October day or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have if this played in the middle of the season, obviously,
or even just a clean January game where it's just cold, but there's no other condition.
Yeah, issue. Look, these guys know what they're up against. I think another thing that stuck out to me is Buffalo's. And look, I know they have the elements just like Pittsburgh does and all like that. They're practicing indoors. Mike Tomlin had these guys out at Acrisure in the wind and the muck, if you will, and he's gonna. Here's what either this is going to be not close, This thing gets away from the Steelers early, and they have to get away from the running game, or this is a close game, and the Steelers somehow find a way to ugly this one out at the end. But 12-year-old Dave would not leave Las Vegas this week.
All right, hoping so. And yeah, I mean, the last couple of playoff games for Pittsburgh, they've allowed 40+ points, and there's a chance for that happening again, I suppose, in this game. But man, you just can't have one of those ugly outcomes the way that it's been the last 3-4 trips.
All right. One of us is going to be right on Monday.
And I hope it's you. And I think everyone else will agree upon that. So a little bit longer show today. Let's get to a couple quick reader emails.
Would this be the greatest win of Mike Tomlin's career? Remember a couple of years ago when they went to Buffalo in week 1? Mm-hmm. We kind of had that conversation. I think after the fact, was that Mike Tomlin's biggest win to date? And I think since then, what was it? A win over the Bengals in week 1 of the following season. We talked about maybe that was the best win of Mike Tomlin's career. If the Steelers, whatever it looks like on Sunday, find a way to win to beat the Bills, is that the biggest win of Mike Tomlin's career?
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter how they win it. Winning is all that's going to matter to pull off the upset. This guy's got a Super Bowl, trophy that he's added to the case. So that's an obvious answer to give, but it's going to be probably right behind that in terms of the magnitude of the win.
And look, make no mistake about it. No matter what it looks like, if they lose, to me, this has been an unsuccessful season.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I know that was our goal, but the way
because the way it transpired, I obviously it's quite amazing. They've got themselves to where they're at, especially the way the first half and firing your offensive coordinator and all like that. But to me, I mean, the standard was we got to see this team come out of it with a playoff win.
Yeah, what I would say is, to go from a month ago, they were 7-7, the season felt over, to get to this point, even have a playoff conversation to discuss is remarkable. But if they lose, that cloud will continue to hang over this franchise of, okay, they can get to the playoffs and then they just get bounced and they're just stuck in this purgatory of a decent team, but not a team that can really threaten and go anywhere. That will continue, and rightfully so, if they cannot win this game. So that'd be my interpretation of that from a larger perspective. But there will still be things to be proud of for how this team finished the year out, regardless of this outcome.
Yeah, I'm tired of platitudes. All right.
I don't think it's a platitude. I mean, I recognize, playoff wins have to be the goal. But this team, when they were 7-7, do we expect to have this conversation right now, but to having a chance to beat Buffalo in the playoffs? I didn't. And that says something.
All right. Shall we get to the email machine?
Yeah, just a couple here, and then we'll close things out and come back Monday.
All right. Michael Taminga writes in, Minka's role and effectiveness. Weakness at what position caused the Steelers to use Minka in the box so much this year? If it was lack of size and tackling acumen at the other safety spot, will a pairing of Eric Rowe free Minka to be more of a ball hawking center fielder again? Any word on whether Minka will still have his hand in a cast on Sunday? I think there was some pictures of him without the cast on there. Whether or not, I mean, I think he practiced
without it.
I think he's ready to roll. Hard to make splash plays when you have to catch the ball with your helmet, he says. Look, because of the weather conditions, hopefully Minka's not having to play a lot of center. I think I think a key point in this game is Minka closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think he was doing that earlier in the year because they were mixing and matching, didn't have an every down strong safety. Again, Neal was playing in their base 3-4 package, and Casey was coming in nickel. And so when they were in nickel a lot, and Minka came down to be that box guy as opposed to Casey. So I think Rowe can be that classic box player at this stage in his career, and that can free up Minka. I think you're going to move him around some. He's not going to be static. You want to support the run because Buffalo, again, can run the ball. You want to put him on Kincaid occasionally, play some free safety, roam around, Robert coverage, those types of things. So hopefully it just looks like a Minka game where he's wearing a lot of hats as opposed to kind of being more stuck in one or two roles.
I don't want him making tackles 12, 14, 18, 19 yards down the field. I want his tackles to come closer to the line of scrimmage, and I think that bodes for a good game for him. Scott writes, hi, guys. It's great to be writing with you and the podcast into the wild card, he says. Two quick questions. The Steelers running game will obviously be key versus the Bills, especially given the weather. Has Najee had any college or professional experience running the ball in the snow? I think he's played in very cold weather like the Raiders game, he says, last season, but in the snow, is that a concern? I don't think. I mean, I'm playing for Alabama and SEC. I don't think even on the road. I don't think he has, if any. Other. I think the Raiders game last year was about it, right?
Yeah, with just some of the cold. I mean, nothing right outside of Pittsburgh. I don't think he's had. He mentioned something about playing in hail in Seattle, I think, to the media. I don't know what the circumstances of that were, but obviously that's not a cold weather issue. But I'm not concerned about him in cold weather. I think he's built for these moments, and I think he's proven that. So I think we'll be good to go.
Number two, during this 3-game Mason winning streak, I don't think the Steelers have ever been down by multiple scores yet. That's where I'd start to get concerned about the offense needing to become one-dimensional with the passing game, and I don't know if their pass blocking / Mason are capable of that. Your thoughts? Yeah, Scott, they can't get down. They can't get in this game where they're having to chase on the scoreboard and put the ball in the air a lot. I can't see an instance where if they're down 30, look, you got to make a concerted effort to, if you do get down, to still do the things that you want to do. But I mean, if you fall down in the second half by more than 2 scores, that's danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah, it's happened in all their playoff games that they've lost recently. So they know they can't play that way and win that way. They got to jump on them early, keep it close. They can't win being down 17 points.
Seth writes in about depth chart gate. Regarding the controversy over the depth chart, I suspect Tomlin does not believe Rudolph will be back next year. It wouldn't surprise me if they've even talked about it. I saw an interview recently where Mason was very hesitant to commit to the team for next year, which kind of further validates this theory. So Tomlin is currently walking a fine line between win now with Mason and act as if Mason will be gone. The second season is over, and all of a sudden Pickett is your best quarterback again. It's a depressing thought, but one that seems pretty reasonable to me why Tomlin is treating the situation this way. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of laid that out the other day. I think he's Mike Tomlin has set himself up in an escape hatch, if you will, that look, we went to Mason because he had the hot hand at the situation. Kenny was coming back. We've been foolish to bench him. Kenny's still our guy, though, moving forward, and that's why we left him at number 1 on the depth chart. I think that's exactly why this thing has played out the way it has on the depth chart.
I agree. I think that's the rationale there.
All right. Got enough of them in here. Plus, we've run way long today, so I think we got to get out of here. Don't we, Alex?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Excited for the game coming back, and we'll cover it win or lose.
All right, we'll talk about it Monday. You can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Find the ad-free button there. Appreciate the listenership. These last several weeks have been tremendous. Appreciate all the support on the site, SteelersDepot.com as well, too. Got some great scouting reports up there this morning. Obviously, got you covered throughout the weekend leading up to game time and beyond on the site. So we hope you get on over there to SteelersDepot.com and check us out. Thanks to Matt Perino again for joining us on this podcast. And until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.